Okay, everyone, thank you so much for coming back to our summit today. And we're very, very excited and very lucky to have Mrs. Kathleen Dudley with us today. She is an amazing activist. I started working with Kathleen about 13 months ago, and she was working on the mask issue it was in Santa Fe, right, Kathleen?
Yes.
Yeah. And I was very impressed with Kathleen, the work she was doing there and the groups she was organizing and the impact that she was having on the community. So we did some work together on creating groups and how to create effective groups. And that was really good. And since then, we've been doing a lot of different things and putting events together and helping our group put events together. But Kathleen really wanted to talk to about something today, which I think is a very, very important issue that we need to cover in the summit. And that is what we're calling the demasculation of our men. And it's something that Kathleen knows a lot about. I think we all realize that something is changing with our men and in this country and in the world. And that's what we're going to talk about today. It's a very, very important subject. And so, Kathleen, why don't you go ahead and start telling us what you know about this and what we need to know about it.
Okay, well, thank you, Clyde. It's a real honor and a delight to be with you on this summit. My background is quite varied. I have been everything from a farmer to a beekeeper to a gardener to a college professor, a writer, a poet, a musician, and a grassroots organizer, and a reflexologist. So I come from all of those postures, but primarily today I'm coming from that position as a holistic healthcare practitioner. And in this process of my work, working with people to increase their vitality and their health and understand their empowerment, I began writing a book called Woman's Worth, Man's Worth: The Overfed Body, the Underfed Soul. And as I began writing that book back in the early or mid 2000s, I was in Oregon at the ocean, and I began to see something and hear something that disturbed me greatly. I began to see a change in our men. I began to see the changes occurring in the young men in their 20s and 30s. I saw men walking down the beach towns with female breasts, male breasts, and I was quite alarmed by that. I didn't understand it because they were not heavy men. But I was fully engaged in my own research at that time on my book on health and healing. And I started to do some looking at what was going on, because this was a party town, lots of alcohol, lots of pot smoking. And as I later found out that regular use of marijuana increases the estrogenic substances in the body, decreasing the testosterone, but primarily increasing the estrogen, therefore increasing the male breast tissue cells, causing male breasts to start forming. And I knew, I talked with many
You mean causing female breasts to start growing in men?
Causing men's breasts to start forming. Because
okay.
they have, yes, sorry, they have the cells in their breasts, but they actually were invigorated by the estrogenic compound of marijuana. Wow. And I started talking to women, I started talking to men, asking them if they understood that component, and everyone was clueless about this. And this fact came from an RN who I knew, who had done some research and shared that with me. So I had that fundamental source knowledge. But that was just one side of it. I started looking historically at what was happening because of the grassroots work that I did and looking at the impact of corporations. Of course, our first corporation was the railroad in the 1800s in this country. And what happened with corporations? They ultimately took away our dreams, our raison d'etre. They took away the opportunities of our men. And when you collapse someone's purpose, what happens to that individual? That individual's self-esteem and their drive is diminished. And so we can see this going back historically. Then we can look at all the wars where our men are put in the wars and they're killed.
Yeah.
Well, how do you get rid of a society? You weaken them at their strongest link, which is the man, the warrior. You kill them. Quite literally, you kill them. You put them in wars. In this country, I think, and you'll know this better than I, so I'm just going to make this up, but we have been in war in this country approximately 127 years of 138 years of being a United Nations of this country. So we've had plenty of time to kill off our men. And we've seen that in Russia, the Soviet Union. And so we know that's a very powerful tact to be able to use to kill off our men. Then, of course, we have socialism and communism, which also diminishes people's drive and purpose. It takes away their capacity to be able to meet their dreams and do what they want and fulfill their passion. So that's just one area of what has happened to our own men and the demasculation of our men. And then over the many years, really starting in the 1900s, seriously introducing mega chemicals, particularly by World War II. But the estrogenic compounds in our herbicides and pesticides has been well known. And the poundage of chemicals that is produced since World War II is just this one spike straight upwardly. Yeah. And so we have those estrogenic chemicals that are, again, also tipping.
Right. Yeah. Well, I remember DDT. You know, we've since found out DDT has all kinds of. And I'm sure that's some of what it is in DDT. But when we were little boys, all our friends, we'd get on our bikes, and when they would spray for mosquitoes, we would ride behind in this cloud of smoke. You know, we thought that was really cool. Nobody said anything about it. Nobody thought that wasn't a bad idea. And, you know, so even from a young age, all the boys of our generation, you know, were definitely taking in a lot of DDT when we were young, which I'm sure did not have a very good impact.
Right, and there's a connection, a link between polio and the exposure to DDT.
Right.
So yes, it's a very serious one, and I've heard that from many men who have done the same thing that you're talking about.
Right.
After we have this historical exposure to wars and the removal of our capacity to have our own dreams fulfilled, we also can look at what's happened in various countries, including this country, with opium being brought in the late 1800s into this country. So when you introduce addictions into a society, you collapse it. We've also seen that with the Sassoon family in China, the same basic period of time in China, and how the opium dens, because they were a very productive society, as this country also has been based upon entrepreneurial spirit.
Well, that was the English. The British brought the opium in to get the Chinese people addicted on purpose, so that, you know, to boost the opium trade that they were making, so that they were creating so much wealth from.
Well, it was primarily to collapse a society.
Yeah, right.
And we continue to see that with other addictions. There was a wonderful book on alcohol that was in a bookstore where I worked when I was in Oregon for a short time. And it was about all the ceremonies. Every single ceremony that we have in this society has alcohol. Now, alcohol is addictive. Alcohol creates aggression, it creates anger, violence. It's one of the fundamental aspects that breaks down relationship, and it's inculcated into our society. The other aspect of alcohol is that it is an inflammatory substance, and underlying all inflammation is disease, but also inflammation decreases dopamine, which is a hormone that's produced in the brain. And when our dopamine centers are diminished, then that impacts our drive as well. So we have all of that dovetailing. But then there are other addictions. Sugar is the most highly addictive substance in the entire earth. And we have sugar sweet receptors on our tongues at birth. And so it is something that when it is played up can become a lifelong serious addiction, causing tremendous disease all the way through to the rampant issues of diabetes. And then of course, with the inflammation caused from sugar, all the diseases that happen. And then we look at coffee, which is also an addictive substance, and it's inflammatory. So we look at all of these substances in our food that are all considered normal, natural, healthy, and all of them are diminishing our capacity to be our fullest, most intact person. And they're really very much a part of our American standard diet.
And also every single one of those things you mentioned, alcohol, let's see, sugar, all of those things are also acidic. So you're destroying the alkaline acid balance, which is also so important, and actually is what is the basis of our immune system, is our alkaline acid ratio. And if that's off, that's really what causes disease. It's not germs and viruses that cause disease. It's the environment that the body is in, how healthy the environment of the body, the immune system is. It has a lot to do with alkalizing and just the liquidity and the liquid system in the body. If that's out of balance, you're going to have disease, diabetes, heart, cancer, whatever. So again, that probably also goes back to the masculinity, right? And from a physical basis.
Of course it does, because for us to be optimal, for our men to be optimal, they must have health. And so we look at things like, our gut is the center of our health. 80% of our immune system is in our gut and how it relates to the brain. And the gut is considered the second brain. So when you have an attack against our very center of our immune system, we're in very serious trouble. And then, of course, we have Roundup, which is glyphosate, and Roundup, or the glyphosate, is actually registered as an antibiotic by the drug companies. And what it does is it breaks open the tight junctions of the cells. And if you can imagine not having an interior and an exterior of your cell, no cell integrity, and your gut starts leaking, it does not know what is inside and what is outside. And so all of a sudden we have been attacked at the very basis of our bodies. And who's spreading the glyphosate over all the pastures, over the fields, over the lawns? It's our men. They're the ones most exposed to this. So it's an affront, it's an assault directly at our men. And so then of course, we also have to take a look at the whole wireless and the cell phone issue. And where do we put our cell phones? Where do we put this
in our pockets?
Radiation, yes, this microwave radiation right in our pockets. So what it does is it diminishes the sperm count. When you take the cell phone out of your pocket,
I don't have it in my pocket. No, I'm going to stop that.
Very good. But what happens? What happens is it has its own signal that is not the same as the body. It interrupts the body's signal. And it is a lead cause, known cause for erectile dysfunction. And no one is talking about that. What they're talking about is infertility and DNA damage, which in and of themselves is horrific, because what we're seeing and the projections, if we follow the trajectory today, is that there will be no more reproduction.
In the trajectory that we're going.
Exactly. And therefore, the human species is not going to be able to reproduce, which in and of itself is such an alarming situation. But if you look at what happens when, and most people have not a clue that the weapon that they use, that they're addicted to, their cell phone, that they carry on their body, the women are developing breast cancer, the shape of the antenna of the cell phone in their breast. The men are developing erectile dysfunction very early on. And then, yes, there are herbs to be able to counter that. And there's Viagra. But what most people don't know is that 86% of the men who use Viagra on a regular basis develop cancer of the cornea. And that is something that I researched a number of years ago.
Of the cornea?
Of the cornea.
Why is that?
I don't know. Why did they use saltpeter? I don't know. I'm sure there's a connection, but I'm not quite clear.
But they found that connection. The more Viagra use, the more cancer of the cornea.
Specifically of the cornea, and they treat it with radioactive pellets in the eye, which in time causes blindness. And what did they say about young boys masturbating? Don't masturbate because it'll make you blind. Well, isn't that an interesting connection? I haven't studied it very far other than that, but there's no surprise that, that there's some connection in all of this. So we have solutions by our allopathic system, but we don't want to go there. We want to create optimal health. Now, I don't know about you, but all this estrogenic exposure, people drinking out of plastic water bottles, baby bottles, babies being given baby bottles out of plastic from the time they're born, the over exposure to bisphenol A. And by the way, there are no safe substitutes. When they say bisphenol A free plastic, that is another hoax. Bisphenol S, bisphenol M, they're all from the same building block. They're all the same estrogenic components. They're just waiting until the population becomes aware that they're being duped.
What is, just off subject here before I don't want to forget this, what is a safe water bottle for people to use?
A safe water bottle is glass.
But if you're on a bike trip, you can't take glass because
I do. Okay. You can get, stainless steel, very thin stainless steel. The problem is, and this goes back to the 80s, I saw an article in the New York Times about how all of the metal today that is being produced, they're putting their depleted uranium into all of our metal gadgets. So metal eyeglasses, metal hips, lawn chairs, metal cooking pots. So our metal these days, our stainless steel isn't clean. We're being exposed to depleted uranium. And this was a New York Times article years ago in the 80s. So we probably can't buy any metal these days that is not contaminated with radioactive depleted uranium and other such toxins. So that's why I say glass. And I do carry everything in glass.
Okay. I wonder if there's some kind of a metal bottle you can have with a glass inside for a water bottle, because when I'm carrying on a bike, it's too, my water bottles fall off my bike all the time. I don't want to get glass all over the road, but
you know what? I clean up glass all the time. And, to me, it's a very small issue compared to the health depletion.
Okay, well, that's a good point. That's a good
we've been taught the mind control is so great, but I wanted to get back to looking at men that I have seen who are on a standard American diet. And I was talking to a young man recently in my not very far from where I live. He told me that he used to weigh 60 pounds more, and he ate the standard American diet. He had man boobs. He was addicted to pornography because his generation was introduced to it as a standard fare. And he said that the dopamine depletion was so great that he had no need for any pleasure outside of this artificial
Right.
pornographic stimulation. And we have dopamine centers in our brain. It's a hormone along with serotonin and other hormones. But if we do not manage our own physical bodies beauty and the magnificence of it and allow these external synthetic interferences, then we lose our own integrity as human beings. And so what he was saying was he had to release himself from his addiction to the pornography. He started using he's Hispanic, his old knowledge of herbs. There are many herbs that can be used to return this. He had lost his erectile dysfunction. And then what he was saying was he was able to drop weight. But what I see with men who are still going along in that trajectory is they are developing a body that looks very feminine, hips and a stomach and a bottom and thick and wide thighs, because estrogen increases body fat. That's why men and women's bodies are so different. Men have testosterone levels that are high and women have estrogen levels that are high. And why women, when they are pregnant, gain weight, because there's a greater flow of estrogen for the development of the baby. And so when men are exposed to this influx of estrogen, their voices go higher. And what this friend of mine said was his voice even dropped when he changed his whole perspective. And so the fat hippie men with breasts and bottoms and that's what they're doing. So what happens to our warrior when they're exposed to these chemicals in this food and in the air and the water and the soil? Because today the glyphosate is everywhere. Even bioengineered fuels are spewing out this glyphosate because it's
the Roundup Ready. The Roundup Ready is used in all of those agricultural products that are going into those products. Yes,
exactly. And when we look at that, how it's so complete.
Right.
We must start looking at what our choices are and how we're going to stop exposing us. So very healthy foods that are certified organic, cutting way back in dairy, cutting back in meat, because those are estrogenic in nature.
I'm just on one point of dairy. I just want to let people know that when I gave up dairy completely, I lost about 12 or 13 pounds and it was just mucus in my body. And then later on, I met the guy who wrote Milk the Deadly Poison. And that's exactly what he said. The average man, when they give up dairy completely, within a month, they'll lose about 13 pounds of just mucus that's in the body.
That's really good for people to know.
Yeah.
And most people don't eat enough greens, and they wonder why they're feeling not well, because we don't have enough potassium in our system. So kale and collards and all these leafy greens, we need 8 to 10 cups a day to get the 2100 milligrams of potassium in our body every day to be able to support.
If you go to Whole Foods, they have a list of the most potency of the on a scale of like 1 to 100 of all the greens. And the ones that are like 100 are, like you said, the kale, the beet greens, collards, they call them, what is it? Beet collard, or no, beet greens, collards, all of those, Brussels sprouts are another one. There's about 8 or 9 of them, and they're all delicious. I mean, for me, what it was when I started eating like that, it took a while, but now I consider all those things delicious. And the amount of salad dressing and stuff I use it goes down all the time, because your body begins to develop a taste for them, because your body knows that it's better for you.
Yes.
And that's my theory, because I make all my own food. I make my salads, and mostly I eat salads and smoothies. And I eat a lot of spirulina. I get by frozen spirulina, which is another huge thing. That's been huge for my diet. Spirulina is amazing. And so now I can't not eat those things. If I don't have those things, I'm craving those things because my body knows that, but it's a transition, but you have to go through that transition. And, it's Dr. Young really helped me with that. Dr. Robert Young and his book, The pH Miracle,
Yes.
which you can buy, pH Miracle. I think it's, phmiracleproducts.com. You can get his new book, The pH Miracle 2020. But I just wanted to plug that book because everyone should read that book. Because everything you're talking about now is in that book, and he really explains all of this. And I think that would take care of it, don't you? Just the diet. I mean, a lot of it.
Alkalizing the body is really important, but then we also have to take a look at the kind of water that we're drinking.
Oh yeah, right.
Fluoridated and chlorinated water, they're all in the same family as iodine, and they actually interrupt and block the receptor for iodine. And so we do have an epidemic of thyroid issues in this country as well. But these and then drugs are also neurological drugs that have fluorine in them or fluoride in them. So we have exposure from water that is really crucial. So a really fine reverse osmosis and distilled water system is really important so that people aren't habitually taking that in and being exposed that way. But there's some other aspects that we can do over and above what we put into our body. But exercise builds testosterone, and fasting builds and increases stem cell. And when we build stem cells, that elongates our own capacity or to be healthier and live longer. There's a wonderful product that I just I've known about for some time, but really didn't dive into it until just recently. I just stumbled upon it about 6 years after I first was introduced to it, called Carbon 60. I don't know if you know it. It's a very high potency of a free radical antioxidant is what I should say. So it basically eliminates the free radicals from the body, and anyone who has an autoimmune disease or any issues going on, it can turn that around. And I inherited a dog a few months ago who has an autoimmune disease, and he's on it now. And so it has reversed macular degeneration that has been in people's both eyes. It completely reversed it. And so it's a very, very powerful antioxidant and definitely worth looking into. So anything that we can do there, as well as
called Carbon 60. Where do you get it?
You can go to c60purplepower.com, and I have no affiliation with it other than they take my money. I get nothing from sharing this, but I started taking it, and I had to cut the amount down because.
Can you give me that website again so everybody has it?
It's c60purplepower.com. And I had to cut it down because it was actually interrupting my sleep. I would take it in the morning, but the very first day I took it, I could feel my energy strong. I'm 68. I run the mountain every day. I have no body pain. I eat an all organic diet. I eat high quantities of leafy vegetables to make certain that I'm getting the potassium. And I drink good well water. And of course, we have to have a purpose, right? And as I started off saying, our men's purposes have been undermined. There is a real attack against our men. But there's one other issue that I want to say is that we evolved together, male, female. And right now, this whole transhumanist AI movement by the oligarchs, by this one world order, is intending to blur the sexes, which is the intention. We want our men to no longer be males. We want them to be effeminate. We want our women to be masculine. Women must become as empowered as our men. We must stand in our feminine as receivers. We must be there for our men. We must recognize our own femininity and not become men in ardency. We must, embrace our lovingness and our unique qualities.
Femininity, your femininity.
Yes, and that is so crucial to this. Men cannot stand alone any more than women can stand alone. And we need our men, particularly today. This silent war against humanity. There are no guns. There are no.
Oh, I really believe that the worst thing that they're doing to us is this blurring of the sexes, these multiple sexes, the new they. They don't know what they are, so they call them they. I mean, all this BS is just total insanity. And they're really good at getting these little kids in school and blurring the minds and confusing them. My granddaughter has friends now that she calls them they. You have to call her they, okay? Because she has decided that she's non-binary, non-sexual, or whatever it is they call it, multi-binary, or
there was a man in Canada who was put in jail because he called his daughter, who declares that she wants to be a boy, he called her she. Yeah. And this came from the Supreme Court of Canada. Yeah. This is serious. So yeah. we have a right and a job, a serious job for women to stand in our femininity and to not to embrace that fully, so that our men can see us there and can interact with us. Men with women, we must embrace the wild man, and the man needs to learn to embrace the wild woman. And because if we do not hold on to our delineation, of course we won't reproduce, right? No erection. How does one copulate? How does one have intercourse without an erection? How if a woman's cells are damaged, DNA is damaged, or a man's DNA, which is it's damaged when you carry a cell phone in your pocket. For right. Every man who carries a cell phone in his pocket, he is damaging, without any kind of reversal on that, his DNA, which is going to affect the next generation. So we are going to have children that are so damaged. We cannot afford to do that. Education is everything. I saw that when we organized in New Mexico to keep Royal Dutch Shell out. Once we all became educated, we understood what this attack against our county was about, what their intention was, and what their technology meant. And we became empowered. We won. We passed a law, the first one on the county level across the entire United States. It was through empowerment. It was through education. So if we become empowered, educated about how to protect our own individual self, then we protect everybody else, just by the sheer nature of us becoming empowered and educated. It's that simple.
So when are you going to finish this book? Because you need to write this book.
Well, I do. I'm writing it, but right now I'm writing letters of exemption for people to not wear masks.
Right.
And as I showed you, hundreds and hundreds.
Show everybody. Show them that pile. This is another thing, folks, you can get out of this meeting for you. This is a bonus.
This is the last two months I've been writing these letters.
Yeah.
All across the world.
So hundreds of them a month, right?
Well, yes.
Yeah.
It's a lot, and each one takes somewhere between 30 minutes to 45 minutes.
So give everybody your website so they know how to get the letter.
Well, my email, I'll give
Okay.
you my email. It's seaside, as in the ocean. So SEASIDE, reflexology at protonmail.com.
Okay, so everybody, let's say, I'm going to say it one more time because probably you're just going grabbing your pen right now. So Seaside, SEASIDE, reflexology, REFLEXOLOGY, right? .com.
Right?
Got it.
No, at proton.
At protonmail.com. Proton is PROTON mail.com.
MAIL.
Yeah, and we got one of Kathleen's mask exemptions several months ago. So and she's getting better at it all the time. So this is really good and it works. So definitely that's your bonus for coming to this session today with Kathleen. And what you brought up is really, really good. And I'm serious though, I do think you need to write that book and get all this information out there so people have like a handbook on this stuff and they know what to do. But I would say that probably one of the most important things we could repeat here for everyone is to go to phmiracleproducts.com, buy Dr. Young's book, pH Miracle 2020, and buy one of those. These are, by the way, he doesn't make any money anymore on these products. He's had to change everything he does. So, and then the ionizers also, there's a separate company that sells those ionizers on that website, and they will get you the water that you need, the alkaline water that you need as well. And like Kathleen said, you can do your own distilling and all that too. But I think what he's got there is what you probably need. So, and then exercise, what he calls it, Kathleen and everyone else, is an alkaline lifestyle. So it's not just the food, it's not just the water, it's your exercise, it's your attitude, it's a good, healthy sex life, it's sunshine, it's all of that. It's the oils, it's all those different things. He said there were 6 doctors, and I can't remember what they are now, but the 6 main doctors, water was one, food, sunshine, exercise. Those are the things that you really need to be, and attitude, frame of mind, all of that is what creates an alkaline body. And if you're alkaline with the right pH, you will not get sick. COVID is nothing. COVID is not, in fact, they haven't even isolated the COVID, supposed COVID cell. I mean, it's never been found. It's flu. And it's less damaging than most of the flus that we've had in the last 15 years.
Well, the fact of the matter is that the flu is a misnomer.
Right.
It's really just the exosomes in our body that are helping our body to detox because we've had too much sugar, too much alcohol.
Right.
We've eaten fatty foods. We've moved away from an alkaline diet, and so our body is having to move those toxins out of our body. Exactly. The body is really a very simple but complex and very finely tuned system. It knows exactly what to do. And that's what this so-called flu that the allopaths call, that Rockefeller said to Pasteur, look, I'm going to pay you some money, come up, spread this idea of the germ theory, which he recanted on his deathbed because he knew that Antoine Beauchamp, who was his contemporary in the 1880s, who said it's all about the terrain, really was correct. So it's like what you're saying. And I wanted to add 2 more things into that. Avoid all soy and all flaxseed. Flaxseed itself is 8 times more estrogenic than soy. And we've been knowing about soy for a very long time.
I didn't know that. I have flax seeds in my seed mix. I thought they were supposed to take flaxseed.
So did I, but it is 8 times more estrogenic than soy. So
man.
So to push that imbalance and increase your estrogen, we must eliminate flaxseed. But that's how well they have done, how good they have done, how effective they've been at programming us into thinking that, you know, these things are healthy for us, even when they appear to be healthy. Good organic flaxseed. So use it in your hair, in your shampoo, for your rinse. That's really good.
Okay, but not in your body.
Not in your body.
Okay, I'll take that. I have about 7 other seeds I use. Is there anything wrong with let's see, sesame seeds are fine, right?
Sesame are great.
Yeah.
Chia seeds are great.
Chia seeds.
Sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds for a man and a woman, but the zinc, we need healthy prostate. And a healthy prostate, as you alluded to, it's a healthy sex life.
Yeah.
It's an organic diet. It's a good mindset. It's a loving relationship. Selenium is also something else that we've known has been depleted from our soils for many, many decades. Selenium is also necessary for the support of our hormone, you know, our endocrine system, for the prostate, a very big part of that as well.
Right.
So they're interconnected. It's all interconnected. And so, you know, and of course, going back to the whole issue of pornography, we have only so much capacity for dopamine expression on a daily basis. It's no different than our cells. Our cells on a daily basis can only use 1 teaspoon of glucose. If we flood it with more, where does it go? It goes into the bloodstream and it sets us up for pre-diabetic conditions until finally we become diabetic. You know, it's a good analogy. It's really no different when with pornography, it overextends us. It pushes us to the point where we no longer can access our own natural dopamine through a loving touch, through a kiss, through a relationship with someone we love, and then our own natural sexual interrelationship with them. And so we have been taught. It's been infused into our cultures, and it's a very negative expression because it's false, and it takes us away from our own empowerment and our own freedom. And that's where the destruction is. It's because it makes us less human and more robotic and more synthetic.
Wow, what a wrap up that was. That was an awesome rant there.
Well, we want to be an integral part of nature, which we are.
Yeah.
And we are not going to allow these psychopaths, this one world order to remove us from that divine place, our birthright.
You mean Kissinger wasn't right when he called all of us useless eaters?
Oh, Kissinger keeps showing his ugly head from decade to decade. You'd think that he'd be dead by now, but
yeah, I don't know. I hope everybody that's listening knows that he said that. He was caught off. He thought the microphone was off, and he was having one of his meetings somewhere with all the elites, and he said, "Oh, just more useless eaters," talking about the people of some country. That's to them, to the elites. That's what we are. You have to understand that.
We're not the chosen few, and yet we have our birthrights to be here, to live here, and through history, so many people have been annihilated as a result of those who feel chosen.
Yeah, exactly. And we'll have to do another one on this, on the whole New World Order thing and the population, and that we need to reduce the population, which is a misnomer. And of course, everything they say, you know, is wrong. But they have a plan, and they're very smart, and they have trillions of dollars just between Bill Gates, Bloomberg, George Soros, and the Rockefellers. We're talking trillions of dollars, you know. So
well, they do have that, but they have no heart. No. And psychopaths have no heart, and that's why as good as what we embrace as love is always going to overpower the evil.
Yeah, and there is no doubt that God is on our side, and that's our greatest ally. And God did not give us free will, and the divinity, the divine consciousness that we have as human beings, to not be able to use it.
And Clyde, one last thing, that is why it is so important that men understand and women understand this demasculizing, masculization of men, because when we are taken away from our greatness, because we all are magnificent in and of ourselves, but if we don't connect with that, we lose that amazing power that the very few are terrified of.
Yeah, and people
We
should know.
must claim
I mean,
it.
God wants us to be the men, to be the best men that they can be, and He wants the women to be the best women that they can be. And when we get that all confused, we're going against God's will. There's no question in my mind about that. This whole multi-sex thing and transgenderism and all this stuff, it's not what, I mean, this is not something to be promoted, and it's not something to be taught and pushed on young children without the parents' involvement. That's just sick stuff.
Well, we don't want it pushed on them even with the parents' involvement.
No.
We need to stop it.
Yeah, I agree. So that's the good point with stuff. We got to stop this stuff, folks. Thank you for joining us today, though. This was a very, very important meeting in our summit. So I hope you know, a lot of people are watching this, and we'll look into this thing and really take what we said about diet importantly, because that is really the key, is our immune system. And anyway, oh, and we should tell them, go online. We just found this today, and look up what's his name. I gave you the YouTube. What's his name? The comedian. I gave you the.
Oh yes, you did. George Carlin.
George Carlin. Thank you, George Carlin. Germs, immune system, YouTube. So just go to YouTube and look up George Carlin, germs, immune system. It's very in line with what we just said. And it's funny, very, very funny.
He's funny.
Yeah.
We need humor and love.
Yes,
to,
we do.
To maintain.
Yeah,
our
we need to get that
humanity.
out there and get that little piece out there. It's very funny, and he's very, very true and very right on. So thank you very much, Kathleen. Awesome job. And
Thank you,
everybody
Clyde.
for joining us. And welcome. I hope you're coming soon to another one of our interviews soon. Thank you very much.